Thank you for purchasing a set of IsoFlex marine engine mounts. I'm Matt, I'm the engineering manager at IsoFlex Technologies, and today I'm going to run you through our 12 steps to installing a marine engine mount. The engine mount has a critical job in a conventional inboard application. It's a connection point between the engine and your vessel that takes all of the power of the engine. The mount helps reduce vibration for your comfort and reduces equipment fatigue. Here at IsoFlex, we make some of the strongest and best designed mounts in the market. We use polymer instead of rubber on our isolated cores and bases, and this makes them impervious to petroleum products so they won't rot or rust like steel. But with any marine mount, installation is critical. If you get the installation wrong, you're not going to get the best performance out of the mount, and it's likely you might get some vibration transferring through that's going to cause discomfort to everyone on board. Shaft alignment and mount installation go hand in hand. If you have a poorly aligned shaft, you can create extra wear on your mounts, which might cause one or two of them to fatigue early. If you don't have correct mount installation, the result can end up pushing your shaft out of alignment, which is going to cause issues with your drive line and may lead to premature wear of your bearings. When you're doing your alignment, you've got to make sure that your alignment is within 0.05 millimeters or 2/1000 of an inch to ensure you've got correct alignment and you're not going to cause any wear on the components. Due to hull flex, when you get to the point of aligning your shaft, you should always do this in water, because if you align on the land and then you drop the boat into water, the alignment's going to move. The engine mount should be installed as close as possible to the center line of the engine crankshaft. Generally, an engine manufacturer will determine where the brackets for the mounts are located. What you want to ensure is that those brackets are parallel with the engine beds and that you understand the spacing so you can correctly select the mounts to properly balance the weight of the engine. Before you begin installing your mounts, you'll want to make sure that they fit. There's generally two key dimensions that you're looking at when you're doing a mount installation. The first and most critical is the free height of the mount. Your minimum free height is the distance between the engine bearer and the bracket that's going to mount the engine. If your free height of the mount is too big, then you're not going to be able to fit the mount underneath it. And if it's too small, you're going to have to pack plates under the mount to lift it up. The second dimension that we want to look at is the bolt down dimension. The bolt down pattern is generally a standard pattern, so when you're selecting your mount, you should be able to get a direct replacement that's going to drop in so you don't have to rework or re-drill your bearers. Now let's get started on the installation. IsoFlex offers a number of different stud assemblies depending on the mount you ordered, so make sure you're familiar with what you've got, but the general installation should be the same for all of them. If you've got an adjuster on it, ensure that once the stud is installed that you lock down the adjuster nut to secure the adjuster to the mount. The torque that you should be using is 30 Newton meters or 22 foot-pound. If you've got height restrictions, a lot of mounts you'll be able to remove the stud completely, slide the mount underneath the engine bracket, and then drop the stud in from the top. This is great for those installations when you don't have any room to lift the engine. The alternative to this, if you don't have a mount where the stud's removable, is you can take the bracket off an engine and drop the bracket onto the mount and then reinstall the bracket onto the engine. Step 2 is to lift and support the engine, and then we're going to remove the old engine mounts. Once the old mounts are out of the way, we're going to get the new mounts under there, so we need to take off the top hardware that's going to sit above the engine bracket. Once we've got this off, we're going to get the mount on the bracket, and we're going to put the top hardware on and loosely attach the top nut. Once we've got the mount attached to the engine brackets, we're going to lower the engine and make sure that we get the mounts seated correctly before dropping the whole load onto the mounts. Step 3, we want to ensure that the mounts are sitting correctly on the engine bed. We want to make sure that there's no overhang off the edge of the beds of the mounts and that the mounts are running parallel with the engine and your drive shaft. Step 4 is to ensure that the mounts line up with the engine brackets. If the stud's not perpendicular to the bracket and it's leaning over in any way, whether it be to the side, front or back, it's going to unbalance the way the mount loads internally and it's going to compromise the performance of the mount. The mount base has slotted holes that will allow for slight repositioning of the mount to get the correct alignment between the bracket and the stud. We also have swivel washers on our larger mounts that can take up to 4 degrees of misalignment if the engine bracket isn't running perfectly perpendicular with your bearer. If you can't get that alignment between the stud and the engine bracket correct, now's the time to be making modifications either to your engine bearers or to your engine brackets to ensure that you install the mounts correctly. This may mean slotting the engine brackets, re-drilling your bearers, or using wedges or packing plates to adjust the height and angle of the mount. IsoFlex has packing plates in 6mm and 10mm thicknesses in case the gap between your engine bracket and bearer is too large. Step 5. Once you have the mounts correctly positioned under the engine, you're going to secure the hold down bolts to the correct torque. This torque is available in the installation instructions, which should have been included with your mounts or available online on our website. Check this torque again at the end of the installation to ensure the mounts are secure. Step 6, we want to make a note of the unloaded height of the mount. This is so we can compare it to the mount when it's loaded, and we can figure out the deflection of the mount so we can determine the mass distribution of the engine. The unloaded height is the dimension from the top of the mount base to the top face of the washer. To make this step easier, you can use IsoFlex's engine mount deflection worksheet, which is available in the resources section of our website. It's important to note that when you're measuring the static deflections of the mount, you can't use the measurement between the engine bearer and the engine bracket. This is because during your alignment procedure, as you wind up the nut, you're moving the free height dimension, but you're not changing the deflection on the cores. Step 7, we want to begin transferring the weight from the supports on the engine onto the engine mounts. You're going to wind up the adjusting nuts until they start to take the load off the support. Ensure that you don't adjust the mounts higher than 10 millimeters, which is the maximum adjustment range of the mounts. Once the mounts are partially loaded, remove the supports on the engine and transfer the weight entirely onto the mounts. Step 8, with our mounts now fully supporting the engine, we're going to bring our transmission and shaft back into alignment. With the engine fully supported by the mounts, begin winding the mounts up to bring the transmission back into alignment with the shaft. Carefully work all mounts up together, paying close attention to getting equal load sharing on each pair of mounts by measuring the heights of the mounts. Please take note that correctly aligning the engine and gearbox assembly can be time consuming, and it is critical. IsoFlex mounts are adjustable and they're designed to assist in this process. Step 9, calculating the static deflection of the mounts. Now that the full weight of the engine is on the mounts and they're correctly aligned, we can measure the loaded height of the mount to compare it against the unloaded height and determine the static deflection. Again, this is the dimension from the top of the mount base to the top face of the washer. When measuring the loaded height of the mount, check multiple locations to ensure that the mount isn't preferentially loaded in any direction. If there are significant differences in the measurements, it may be that the mount isn't correctly positioned or that the engine load isn't correctly distributed across the mounts. You will use the measurements that you took in step 6 of the unloaded heights of the mounts to compare to the loaded heights. When calculating static deflection, we subtract the unloaded height from the loaded height of the mount. If you happen to be installing a double mount, both cores must have the same static deflection to ensure that the load is evenly distributed across the mount. Step 10, we're going to compare the static deflections of the mounts to ensure that they're operating in the correct compression range. Each pair should have the same static deflection, though there may be some slight variation due to the mass distribution of the engine. Ideally, this difference will be within 0.5 of a millimeter. For optimal performance of a 6-cylinder engine, the static deflection of a mount should be between 2 and 2.5 millimeters. For 2 to 4-cylinder engines, the static deflection should be between 3 to 3.5 millimeters. Step 11, secure the mounts to the correct torque. With the engine correctly balanced, secure the top nut of the mount stud assembly to the recommended torque. You will find this in the IsoFlex mount installation instructions on our website. While doing this, hold the stud so you avoid twisting it. Then, check the hold down bolts are still fastened to the correct torque, which you did in step 5, and tighten them if required. Step 12, recheck your alignment. If the alignment was performed on land, it must be rechecked once in the water to account for hull flex. The alignment should be rechecked after 50 hours of operation to allow for the system to settle. Finally, make sure you inspect your mounts regularly. Look for deterioration of any of the mount components and make sure that your fasteners remain tight. Also, recheck your shaft alignment during your annual maintenance. IsoFlex recommends applying a regular anti-corrosion lubricant such as inox to the mounts to keep them corrosion-free. While IsoFlex polymer components are chemically resistant to most solvents and oils, we recommend that any anti-corrosion lubricants are checked for chemical compatibility before application. Thanks for watching this video on installing a marine engine mount. Be sure to check out our website for more information on our other mounts as well as our marine gearbox couplings. Feel free to contact us with any questions, and remember, we're just a phone call away when it matters.